Anything and everything can be edited. So.
Oh, I know. This isn't my first rodeo. Welcome to the As Cool as It Gets podcast.
Wow. We should use that.
No.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the HVAC Tactical Podcast, Behind the Mindset. You probably recognize this face, Miss G-Money, Giana Brucella.
Giana Brucella.
Speaking of which, most people are going to recognize you from working at Fujitsu.
Yeah.
Also doing the As Cool as It Gets podcast. Well, the theme of this podcast, what we wanted to go over today, is pride and ego. And I feel like what a great segue into this. Like, how did you having to give up a podcast that you built from nothing to a pretty decent little podcast to giving it up completely? How did that affect your pride?
Well, that's a good question.
I told you I had a good one.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that, but I think it was definitely tough to let it go because it was something I really cared about while I was working at Fujitsu, and I really enjoyed doing it, and I really did. And not to sound prideful, but I did start it myself. I learned how to, use the equipment. I learned how to edit. I came up with the interview questions. Like, it was a lot of work, and I really enjoyed it. And to walk away was not easy, but at the same time, I think it's one of those things that everything has a season, and you never know what something you've learned or worked on or someone you've worked for, how that'll impact you in the future.
Well, that was your first podcast.
Yeah. But
did you learn a lot out of it?
I did learn a lot.
But you also enjoyed
I learned
it.
How to be funnier, which is
funnier,
which is hard because I am already.
When is that going to kick in?
Oof. That wasn't that funny. That wasn't that funny. It's fine. That was actually a good one.
This is where we're going to get the close up with that serious
with
face.
My dead eyes. Now I lost my train of thought.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. I lost train of thought. I was going deep there for a second. I guess it was too deep too soon.
Yeah, I feel like pride and ego is definitely something that is plaguing our industry for sure. And I feel like I've always said that there's two things in our industry specifically that are really a big problem. It's pride and lack of education. And so I think we have to, as we step into this trade, like, we're always pushing people like, hey, be the best that you can possibly be. Like, keep training, keep learning, read the manuals, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like, take pride in your work, and that's great. But I guess, where do we draw that line, right?
Yeah.
It's like too much pride, having pride in what you're doing, but then there's a line where you have to draw where you have too much pride in what you're doing, and that pride takes over as the form of ego, right? Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's a dangerous place to be.
I would agree. I think that the line is probably maybe when you're overextending yourself, or I know when I like to be the best at everything. I'm a perfectionist when it comes to some things, and I want to say that it was me, that I did it. I want my name on, like, all over it. So I think the issue it becomes prideful when you're either not delegating, you're not handing things off to other people, the load is too heavy, all your time is going to one thing, you're losing time with other things that matter, friends, family, whatever else you value. So it's a fine line for sure.
Yeah, I think over the last couple of years, I've really had to learn to be able to relinquish and let go.
Yeah.
And I've also come to learn that I can't do this stuff, can't build this thing by myself. And you have to be able to rely and hand things off to other people without like micromanaging them, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's definitely a form of humility that takes place when you're able to do that. But if you look at every successful thing that has ever been created, nobody ever did it by themselves. They may have gotten started by themselves,
Yeah.
right? But they can't scale it and get it to where it's supposed to be or needs to be by themselves.
Right. And I think that's important because it's also like, just because you're delegating doesn't mean you're not good or capable of doing it all. Like, because I'm sure, everybody has multiple talents and you want to be able to do everything. But I think that's where the humility comes in, is where you say, okay, like, I know, like, yes, I can do all of this myself. I know that I'm capable. I am talented, but other people are too. And that's where you have to pass it off.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely, when you look at, being talented, other people having different talents in other areas, and, so I had a guy one time say, hire your weaknesses, right? Work your strengths and hire your weaknesses. And I think being able to let go of your pride allows you to recognize where your weaknesses are and admit that, right? And then hire accordingly. But surrounding yourself with people who are better than you at those things, right? Smarter than you at those things. And, creating a successful anything doesn't mean that you have to be like this crazy smart person, right? Or even a creative person. You just have to be smart enough to bring people into the circle who are smarter than you.
Yeah.
Right. And I feel like with the magazine as an example, like I feel like I've done that, right?
Yeah.
Pulling people into the mix.
Who are smarter than you, yes. Me. No, that's too much pride. But I wouldn't even say, like, not necessarily smarter, but it's, people are talented in different things. Like,
for sure.
You know a lot about things that whatever they may be.
Wow, thanks for expounding on that. Yeah.
And I know things.
Well, that about does it for today, folks. Yeah. Thanks for tuning in.
I feel like we're both really good with pride and humility, and none of us we're not prideful at all.
I think I have a healthy amount of ego.
Yeah. Which isn't bad. Like, you should have a good amount.
I mean, if you look at if you just take the brand, right, that we've been creating for the last 6 years and the award show, right? I've had a lot of kudos from a lot of different people, and the messages I get, that are like, hey man, you changed my life and this and that. Like, I don't think that I changed your life, right? But at the end of the day, like, this is people's perception.
Yeah.
And so the old me, the younger version of me, would be haughty and, just, yeah, man, I did that. I built this, And I think I've had to learn, right? It's a learned trait to be humble, right? And not let those words from other people really take over and get to my ego,
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times too, it's like, when your pride and your ego gets too high, it comes across at how you treat people, And so I've had to be real careful of that, because there's some people that I don't want to have conversations with. There's some people that I don't want to sit there and hear what they have to say, right?
Yeah.
But I have to remember that, hey man, I have to be an example, you know what I mean? And for lack of a better word, like a witness and a testimony of my life, right? And in what I'm trying to do, and I have to act accordingly. So.
Yeah. It seems like ego is such a big thing. Well, I mean, I feel like this is talked into the ground, but ego is such a big thing in the industry. So, and it's like, do you think people are just not aware of it? Or do you think everybody is aware of it and some people just don't?
Well, nobody wants to address it. Nobody wants to say that their ego, that they have an ego, or that they're egotistical. Nobody wants to admit that they're prideful, right? But I think culture teaches us to be prideful. Culture teaches us to walk around and, live your truth, and most of the time people are walking on false truths. There's only one truth, right? So at the end of the day, I think that people have to see it, people have to learn it, people have to have it brought to their attention in order for them to address it. But most importantly, people have to want to be willing to address that, right? And I think a lot of times that only happens when you become like super embarrassed in front of, you're humiliated in public, right?
Yeah.
I've been humiliated in public in my space, in my industry, right? And I'll never forget the way that feels. And that was a big turning point for me, where I was like, I need to kind of tone this whole thing back a little bit. But can you remember any specific time in your life that you've been humiliated or humbled in a public space or at work or
I mean, there's
amongst
just
family?
so many that I don't know what to pick. I really don't know what to pick.
Well, there's this one time in Vegas.
There is one time in Vegas. I could tell that story.
You don't have to tell the story.
I mean, well, I think personally for me, being embarrassed in public is something it's like a fear of mine. Like, I don't want somebody to call me out in front of other people. Like, it's just, I hate it so much. But when things like that do happen, like, for example, if it's like at work and somebody, like, I don't know, not like reprimands you, but addresses something in front of other people, or I don't know, something of that caliber, I hate to have that like awareness that I did something wrong, or that I didn't like perform the right way or something. But at the same time, when those things do happen, I think there are also moments of self-reflection where you can just improve as a person. Like, for example, I think I've learned to be more maybe confrontational in like a healthy way and speak up for myself, because I was, if I'm being, I don't know, talked down to in public or something, I need to be able to respond in the right way. So I think like anything with, in this thing that we're talking about, you can learn from those moments of humiliation.
Every moment in life is a moment to be learned from.
It's true.
So, I mean, I can think of an example of like driving like an idiot on the road, right? And this guy is going slow, and so you flip around him, and then you look at him and you mad dog him, you flip him off, whatever the case may be. And then you speed past him only to get caught at the red light, and then he pulls up next to you at the red light. It's like all that commotion and nonsense, and you didn't go anywhere, right? And I mean, and then you don't even look at him. You just keep your eyes straight and pretend that he's not there, right? And then that's the pride, right? And then you have a sense of humiliation there, but like your pride is just so strong, you're just like, oh, I just refuse to accept what I did was just dumb. You know? I mean, that's a great example of probably something that most of us do every day.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I mean,
I've seen how you drive, so
I was going to say, just the other day, I jumped a curb and hit my tire, and then I went to work yesterday, and we're sitting inside, and they're like, "Yo, G, what happened to your car?" I'm like, "Oh, people see that? I didn't even see it. I thought I could I jumped the curb. Who cares? Nobody's gonna know." Meanwhile, everybody sees that I
jacked up
my wheel.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you're right.
So I came across some stuff on the internet about pride versus humility, and it was like 50 things that, can help you kind of discern the difference between, pride and humility. One of the things was pride says, I already know everything. And humility says, the more I learn, the more I see how little I know. Mm. And I think for me personally, when I was in my early to mid 20s, when I decided, you know what, if I'm going to take this business seriously, like if I'm going to do this as a career in HVAC, like I want to just try to be the best that I can be. And as I went back to educate myself, I quickly realized how much I didn't know. Yeah. And all the stuff that I had been taught was like rules of thumb, right? Mm-hmm. Really wasn't, it got me by and it worked, but it really wasn't the right way to do it. And so I think, you never get to a point in any industry where you just know everything there is to know, right? Yeah. It's constant. Like you can go to be a medical doctor, go to school for 8 years, you get out, right? You get into the real world, you're still learning. 20 years later, you're a master at what you're doing, but you're still learning. So just because you're mastering a craft doesn't mean that there's nothing else to learn.
Right. That makes me think of, I think I'm not a parent, but parenting, I think you spend so much time raising your kids and instilling values that you have. And you have pride in your children. Like I know that it's such like a thing when parents like, oh, I'm so proud of you or whatever. But, I think sometimes it's humbling for them when it's like, okay, like you put in all of this work to raise your kid. Meanwhile, they go off and totally like rebel or do their own thing and, not the way that you raised them to be. And then it's kind of, but right. It's like I think, and all that to say, it's not about you, like as a parent or as a person. That's like, I think it's a shot at your pride because you realize that, okay, like I don't have as much control over this situation as I would like to. I don't know. That's just what I think of.
With kids, I think you have to do your best.
Yeah.
And do better than what your parents did, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully that's what you're trying to do. And then from there, I think you have to understand that your kids don't really belong to you,
right,
from the get-go, right? And at some point you have to release them and let them fly, and let them do what they do. And hopefully you taught them good morals and integrity and, they've built good character, that they're going to make good decisions, right? But I think like anything in life, people have to learn on their own.
Yeah.
And so kids are definitely going to have moments of, pride and moments of humility. And we're all as human, 100%. And as human beings, we all going to go through that. Right. And because we all go through that, there's always an opportunity in every situation in life to learn from that. Right. And so again, using the example of me being humiliated in a room full of other HVAC guys, right? That for me was a learning experience, and I never wanted to be put in that position again because I hated the way that it felt.
Yeah.
So I tried to not embarrass people in public, because I know what that feels like. But if you're being a jerk to people in the room, then I'm probably going to embarrass you in public.
Looks like I got to learn.
Yeah. Maybe that's my pride. I don't know.
Maybe. It's good to be self-aware.
Pride says I have to be the best. Humility says I have to be my best. So
that's tough. That just makes me think of my whole life. My whole life just flashed before my eyes when I think about that. Because I'll think about everything that I've done. Like I said before, I could be a perfectionist. So and there were things that I would just quit because I was like, I know I'm not the best. And it bothered me. And I was an athlete. I played volleyball. I could have played in college. I decided not to because I wasn't the best. Or like I like to paint, and sometimes I'm like, I'm not the best painter, so I'm just not going to do it. But that's not a good thing. That's a pride issue, 100%, and I realize that. So there's like an active. You have to fight it. You have to be active against it, and realize, okay, like this is not about being the best. This is not about, what am I going to go to the Olympics and play volleyball or like sell a painting for 100 million thousand.
Those people are pretty awesome.
No, but all that to say, like maybe, but I am doing my best, and that is my best, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I think it's all perspective, right? So are you happy with where you're at? And if you're not, then do something about it. Change it, right? Push to be better. People don't like it when I say it, but I'm just like, do better. Be better. I mean, it's a choice. It truly is,
Yeah.
So I think everything is a choice. Pride says, don't they know how valuable my time is? Humility says, so this is how it feels when I'm late. I'm really big on being on time and on schedule. Obviously there's only so much you can control, right?
Yeah.
So like coming here today, I was 15 minutes late because traffic is stupid, right? And
so was I. Are you trying to say something about my being late?
And this particular thing just really holds true to me because I'm usually on time for all things, or usually early for all things, that so this is how it feels when I'm late, right? And I got a phone call on the way here. The photographer's here, and for anybody watching, we're in a studio in New Jersey right now, and we had to do it here because she wasn't willing to travel anywhere because her pride. So
it's true.
So, I'm not familiar with this place, right? We ran into traffic. It's raining. Apparently people freak out when it rains here. I don't know. So that's what I'm told. But the photographer here waiting on me, right? He's like, hey, where are you at? I'm like 10 minutes, I'm 10 minutes out. So, because I hate people waiting on me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm always early. It's just like this one actually rings true to me. So,
Yeah. I mean, I think that's just, doesn't really have anything to do with pride and humility, but I think that's just a good point about like the issue of control and life just happening. Like life happens and like, okay, like you were 10 minutes late. Are you going to keep thinking about how you were 10 minutes late for the rest of the day?
yes.
All right. Well, you can't change it. You can't go back in time and be 10 minutes early.
Yeah. I
so
won't
it's
think
like,
about it, but
I think you're thinking about it. You brought it up. You literally just brought it up.
Ugh.
So
She caught me, ladies and gentlemen.
So all that to say, you got to let go.
Sometimes it's hard to let go.
It is hard, but do better.
Pride says, I don't need to change because I'm not the problem. Humility says, I wonder how I can change to help solve the problem. I think a lot of people are not willing to change because of pride. This is just who I am. Take it or leave it. Accept me for who I am, right? But I kind of asked the question, like, is there a better version of you, right? And what does that look like? And if you're not willing to change, then how are you ever going to achieve that better version of yourself?
Yeah.
So
maybe there isn't one.
For some people, I would say there is not. So, do you feel that maybe there's a person in history, maybe somebody who's underrated, that would be a great role model to mold a character after when it comes to humility?
Wow. I can't, this will play into my faith, but and it might sound like cliche, but 100% I would have to say I would model my life after the one who gave it to me. So I think, the life of Jesus and his ministry and just the way that he lived day to day and was just a testament to his character, a humble man who literally, God became a baby, Jesus, and becoming a man, becoming the smallest thing, a child, and then living his life and sacrificing his life for the rest of the world. I can't think of anything more humble than that.
That's pretty humbling for sure. Yeah, I mean, if you look at like back into biblical era, right? Humility back then was like almost looked at from like the Greeks as a form of like weakness, right?
Yeah.
And humility was really geared more towards that's for the servants or the slaves, right? Those are the people who are supposed to be submissive, where everybody else is like, nah, man, we're going to do what we do.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's pretty crazy how, pride and ego has been around since the very beginning, right?
From the very
beginning, right?
Yeah.
So,
what about you?
What about me?
Who's somebody that you model after?
Oh,
when
yeah.
it comes to humility?
Jesus for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. That would be my number one. But, you can also look at, great philosophers throughout time, right? Have come equipped with usually a lot of humility, comes a lot of wisdom. And so a lot of the wisest people just look from a biblical perspective, King Solomon, right? The wisest man who ever lived.
He annoys me, but whatever. It's neither here nor there.
He's a boss. He had 1,000 wives, right?
Yeah, it's like, bro. Ain't nobody got time for that.
Nobody got stamina for that. But no, usually anybody who comes with a ton of wisdom comes with a ton of humility.
Yeah.
So yeah, most great philosophers, right? Obviously, everybody has a form of pride. I don't care who you are. If there's something that you're really good at. And I think anytime somebody's building you up or saying nice things to you or constantly just like lifting you up, I think that you're prone to getting a form of ego there, right?
Yeah. And not to say too, there's nothing wrong with being proud of your work and being proud of your accomplishments and, you know, proud of the person you've become, because I think you should take pride in certain things, but that is the issue, is that there is a line. It's when you overdo it, and then your ego becomes inflated, and
Yep.
and you know, so it goes.
So it goes. So what are some ways that you keep your ego in check, and just in your day to day, right? Whether that be with family, whether that be at work, because I know you well enough to know that you probably think that you do things better in your office than other people do.
All the time, everywhere. Yeah. I think I do everything better
So with
than everybody.
that, how do you keep that in check, right? When somebody shows you, hey, look what I did. And then you're just like, in your mind, you're like, why didn't you just ask me to do that? Because I would have done that way better than you.
Or just, I mean, I think there's, I don't know, the comparison issue. Like I think if I do something and then I'm like, wow, like that was good. And then I'll like leave it and then I'll go back to it and I'm like, that wasn't good. Or like I'll compare it to other people's work and I'm like, I could do better. I could do better. I could do better. And I could always do better. And I think that's also part of it, is like, I feel like we hold ourselves to such a high standard. I know I do. I'm just never like settled on something. So I think just realizing, like, say, like if I do something, I'm like, oh, this was great. And then I see somebody else's work and I'm like, that was way better. Yeah. So that's like also it's a check, because I'm not the only person who can do X, Y, Z. There's people who can do what I do and do it better. But that's also, I think, a great tool to improve, because like you learn from other people. So that's one way you, I think, can swallow your pride and just learn what you can. And I think the same, like, right, for the industry is, you know, there's always going to be something new coming out. There's always going to be something to learn. You're surrounded by people who are knowledgeable and talented and skilled, and you should use them as your resources to improve yourself, to step up your game.
I agree. Is this the first podcast that you've done since you've left your own podcast?
Yes, I believe so.
How does it make you feel? Is it stirring up some emotion?
Well, I know that I'm still super good at
it. And this is why we do the podcast.
I'm kidding. It's a joke.
That's funny.
Why does it seem like I haven't done a podcast?
Not at all. I'm just asking.
Yeah.
So.
No.
Cool.
Yeah.
I think it's a good place to wrap up.
Okay. Well, thanks for having me back on and getting my podcast feet wet again.
And there you have it, folks. Just really wanted to bring some life principles into the podcast. And as we start to make this transition of just focusing on just trade stuff, just really talking about life and getting behind the mindset of what it takes to just throttle through life. We're all human beings. We all suffer from essentially the same things, right? We all have to go through the same things in life. And so how to navigate those waters, how to do it easily, how to learn from other people's mistakes, that's really the best way to do it. So we'll see you guys next time.